And welcome back to the European Parliament in Brussels for the second part of Talking Europe. A sheep farmer and a Roquefort cheese producer turned member of the European Parliament. That's the story of my guest today. José Bové rose to fame 15 years ago after he demolished a half-built McDonald's in the French city of Millau. That was the culmination of a lifetime of protest against what he calls the evil of globalisation. That's his struggle. Mr. Bové, welcome to Talking Europe. You were elected to the European Parliament in 2009. This is your first term here in Brussels. You belong to the Green Party, and I'd like to start with environmental issues that are really at the core of what you've been doing here for the past 5 years. You saw this week that the German government managed to convince its EU partners to delay introducing new limits on CO2 emissions from cars. This is clearly a victory for the lobby of car makers in Germany. Does this make you angry?
Well, it makes me angry because this is for the health of all the European people. We don't decide to have a lower CO2 emission, not only for the pleasure, because it's important for the planet. And if we want to stop the warming, we have no other solution than putting down all the emissions. That's the reason why. But what happened, and it was public, the fact that those big companies or car companies make so many pressure on Mrs. Merkel, and that Mrs. Merkel said, okay, this is the German position, we refuse completely to change the level. The fact that after that, she received 700,000 euros for her party from the same companies, this is completely incredible.
Are you telling us that because of the crisis, the European Union is about to make a U-turn and abandon some of its very ambitious green policies?
It could happen if we're not careful. If the countries don't understand that this is the moment really to change the energy we produce, to change our economy, to have a green economy. In Germany, most of the job in the industry has been built with green industry. When the Germans decided to get out of the nuclear energy, they decided to make big wind energy or solar energy. They built a lot of companies and they created a lot of jobs. And this is really, I think, the issue. We are still in the old economy, and I'm not sure that these big car companies are going to be the future.
But then what business leaders will tell you is that it's very good to be green, to be very green, but not if you are interested in manufacturing. They're telling you that all these rules are costing Europe billions of euros, and we have a problem of competitiveness vis-à-vis our partners in China, in the United States.
The true problem is that the car industry is going to have more and more problems all over the world. In Europe, in France, we have two big companies. It's completely crazy, so many companies we have. At one moment, we're not going to be able to have 1, 2, 3, or 4 cars in each family. It's
so you're telling us there's no future for car makers?
There is no future for this kind of industry if it's still this way. In this moment, they are going to sell cars in China, but those cars are going to be built in China. And we have to say to the people in Europe, this kind of factories are the factory of the past, not of the future. We are changing the way that people are going to circulate in the cities, in the countryside. Of course, we're still going to have cars, but this is not going to be the only way we circulate. And the warming of the climate is going to be a very big problem, and it's going to cost much more money if we're still going on, and we have 5 degrees more at the end of the century. Is going to cost a lot of money for the economy, more than if we're still going on this way.
Let's look at what is happening these days in the United States, where, by the way, you spent part of your childhood, I believe, in California. You know that shale gas exploitation has brought in a sort of second industrial revolution in the United States. It has sharply lowered the price of energy, and a lot of Europeans, at least business leaders are asking you, why wouldn't we try the same here in Europe?
Well, the price is so low that now the cost of production is no more, there's no more rentability on that. So the price is going to increase. This is the first thing. This is really a short victory, because if you want to still have gas at the same level than they have it now in the United States, you need to drill more and more and more every day.
So you're telling us it's a short-term solution?
It's a short-term solution, and we're almost at the peak oil of this production.
Try the same?
Clearly no. We don't have the same kind of country. We don't have the same law on land. And if the United States did that, they changed the law on water, and this was Dick Cheney who changed it and say the law on water is not for shale gas. The laws on climate change, same thing. So they developed their energy with any control. In Europe, it's not possible. And for the first time, the Parliament last week voted a new legislation saying that we need to have impact assessments on every kind of drilling in Europe. So it's not going to be possible. Already several countries in Europe ban hydraulic drilling. This is France, Bulgaria, Czech country is also trying to stop. In Hungary, they don't want it. In Romania, the same.
So you've completely closed the doors?
I think this is not a solution in Europe. And
so what should we do in Europe in order to try and lower energy prices? Because we know it's a huge problem for Europe's businesses.
You know, the first problem we have in Europe is all the energy that is used that we don't need. 40% of the energy which is used by the people, by the industry, is going out in the air. This is completely crazy. So the first thing we have to do is to limit the waste of energy, 40% of which is consumed. This is completely incredible. So this is the first step we have to do. And I believe that if we have more efficiency in energy production and green energy, in 30 years, we can build a new way of consuming production energy. It's really possible, and that's the way we're going to create jobs and a new economy, and to have less dependence from Russia or other countries.
I mentioned the United States. As you know, the European Union has entered talks with Washington in order to try and have a free trade agreement between the two largest economic blocs in the world. You're not very much in favor, I guess. Is it because you're anti-American?
I never was anti-American, because this is one of the countries I love to go. Unfortunately, it's not possible anymore because I'm not allowed to come inside of the United States. I hope it's going to change, but for the moment, it's still like that since 2006. I think it's a bad agreement. It's going to be very dangerous, not only for the European people, but also for the United States. And I think the worst part of this agreement, if it was going on, is the fact that the companies, the investors of the companies, should be able to attack the laws of the country which going against the interest of the investors. That means that, for example, if tomorrow there's a European in a country, in Poland, in Romania, country says, okay, we stop fracking for shale gas, but the company is already there, he's going to be able to attack the government of Hungary or the country, saying, you changed the law, this goes against your interest, you have to give me money back.
So you don't believe the European Commission when it says that it's a wonderful opportunity for Europe, and I'm quoting, it would be the cheapest stimulus plan in history?
I think it's a very good opportunity for corporate globalization. And only the big business company have interest in this kind of thing. And I think this is something we heard about maybe more than 50 years ago, in 1998 of the last century. It was the multilateral investment agreement, which was on the table, AMI, as we said in France, and this is coming back in this kind of negotiation. So we're going to stop it. We're going to say we're going to have a real campaign, and this is going to be part of the European campaign for the elections in May next year.
José Bové, let's leave the United States and return to your native France. As you know, last weekend, a member of the far-right National Front won a by-election in the city of Brignoles. Stephen Carroll reports.
A blueprint for future success. That's what the National Front can take from their latest election victory. The party had won this seat in Brignoles in southeastern France back in 2011, before the vote was declared invalid. This second rerun of that election confirms their support in the region. But the far-right party still only holds 2 of more than 4,000 cantonal seats around the country, a fact seized upon by the French Prime Minister.
Brignoles is a very right-wing county. It's already had a National Front General Council. Let me remind you that Brignoles is not France.
But the National Front victory is part of a bigger picture. It's always suffered in France's 2-round electoral system because the other parties have worked together to block far-right candidates in the runoff stage. That so-called Republican pact didn't work in Brignoles.
The National Front won, but it was only a by-election. That doesn't mean that everywhere in France there will be other Brignoles. But again, the National Front is pushing up in the polls. We can put this in context, but let's not hide the rise of the National Front.
A rise borne out in the polls. A recent survey of voters for next May's European elections put the National Front in the lead, with 4 times the 6% support it registered in 2010. Far-right parties do tend to perform better at a European level. The next real test for the National Front will be French local elections in March.
A recent poll published in the Nouvel Observateur magazine says that the Front National, the National Front, was tipped to secure 24% of the vote in the May European elections. That would mean that the National Front would be ahead of all the other parties, the UMP, the Socialist Party. Do you believe that's possible?
Well, everything is possible, because when people don't believe to anything more, that's what's happened. When the governments were always, each time something was going bad, saying it's Brussels, it's Europe who are responsible of this situation. This is a complete incredible situation. So very often in France, the European election was the election when people were doing what they wanted to do because they didn't care about the result of the
And
election.
often punish
and I
ruling
think
governments.
That's it. And I think this is dangerous. We have clearly to explain to the people that the election at the European level is to build a new democracy, to decide for 500 million of people who are living together in this space. And so we have to build a real democracy. We have to fight against the governments who want to have intergovernmental politics instead of having a federal politics. That's what in which we believe at Greens. Of course, others have other positions, but we need to have a real European debate and not only having this election, which is going to be an election where people don't care. So this is very important for the government and for the party to be sure that these elections go on and we can have a real campaign for European elections.
Now, some estimates show that as much as 30% of the new parliament will comprise Eurosceptics. Can this institution function if 1/3 of the MEPs are against Europe?
Well, it could function because all these 30% are not going to be in the same group. And I am sure that there is no link possible, that's what I hope, between the UKIP, for example, in Great Britain and the Front National. This is completely different kind.
But Marine Le Pen says that she will be able to form a group here in Parliament with a number of parties from other countries.
This is still not
from the
sure,
Netherlands, Austria.
Yeah, you need 7 countries to make a group. So are they going to be, is it possible? I don't know, we'll see. But this is democracy in the Parliament. What I think which is important is for us to understand that we need a real change at the European level. All these crises, what happened in Spain, in Portugal, in Greece, this has been possible because the countries didn't make their work correctly. This is not the problem of Europe. What happened in Greece was the government from right and left during 30 years who didn't go on with the good politics. And it's not Europe who make the problem. Europe has to resolve this problem, not the inverse situation.
José Bové, what's next? After 5 years here in the European Parliament, do you want to go back to your sheep farm in the south of France, or you want to stay here for another term?
Well, I'm going to present myself in the southwest of in my region for the election, and I'm also now in a new campaign, also because for the first time, when we are going to vote in May for the European Parliament, we're going to vote in the same time to say which is the candidate for the presidency of the Commission. And this is the first time this is going to happen.
And you want to lead the Green campaign.
So I am candidate inside of the Green movements, inside of the 28 countries and parties, now to lead this campaign. So we have a primary in this moment, and this is part of the debate. But I think this is important for the people to know that for the first time, the people are going to elect the president of the Commission.
Has Brussels turned you into a Eurocrat?
I don't think so, because during these last years we had this big fight on shale gas, and at the end we win, as usual.
Looking back at what happened 15 years ago, do you regret demolishing the McDonalds?
Well, you know, I think this was an important moment because this was the debate we had on the European situation for health with hormone in beef and what free trade was going to go on with. And so for me, this was an important movement. I think this was part of what we had to do at the European level to change the way of life.
Have you ever eaten at McDonald's?
Never. I think there are a lot of better places to go than there, but everybody can do what he wants.
Okay, José Bové, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you for watching this edition of Talking Europe. I was at the European Parliament in Brussels. It's time to go back to Paris for more news.